Hey there, everyone. Welcome back. I missed last week, so hopefully you were able to get on without an episode of the Empowered Educator, but I'm back this week and ready 100% to go full force forward with our conversations. Last week, I was working on a few different projects that really had my attention. And in addition to that, my dog was acting a little bit wild. Um, yeah, he's almost 14 and a half. He's a big dog. He's a chocolate lab pit bull. He is the love of my life, in addition to my daughter. And he wasn't feeling very well. And so this week I thought maybe our days were kind of coming to an end, but he's doing better today. So he's laying on the bed sleeping. I'm going to let him have his rest while I record this week's episode. So once again, I'm back. I have been working on a couple of different things. I finished up the curriculum for my new teacher certification academy that I will be submitting to the state of Texas this year. I have more work to do, but the outlines are done. So the course outlines, the units, the modules, the assignments, the overall ending project, the courses for on-site mentors for new teachers and for my field supervisors and all of the people that work within the organization are completely designed. Now I need to go in and do a couple of tweaking and revising because we've had legislation do some changes to regulations here in Texas. So I want to make sure those are right and just put the final touches on and do the fundraising so that I can go ahead and submit by December 1st. So fingers crossed. And yeah, if you want to help out, reach out to me. I would love to hear ideas on what makes great teachers here in Texas. And if you are able and in a place to make a donation, we would definitely appreciate that. All of that information is in the show notes so that you can go over to our GoFundMe and give from your heart. So anyway, moving forward, I have been working with English language arts teachers on my campus. I currently am working on a middle school campus, and we're actually grades 5 through 8. It's a small middle school. It's all girls, which is pretty cool. Of course, it has its drawbacks as well, but it's been an interesting experience. And I do believe that I'll stay with this organization until I'm ready to go into my own businesses full time. But having said that, one of the things that I get to do with these language arts teachers is build and grow their skills. So I have these teachers that I work with. They are not currently fully certified. So I get to use some of my work that I'm designing and kind of see if it works and how it plays out with everything. But in addition to that, we are already kind of in the thick of things. And last year, we made a lot of gains with our students, not just in their test scores, but also in their academic habits and how they show up for school and their attendance rates and their behaviors and just our full motivation of wanting to be a great student and understanding what a great student is. And now we're trying to fine tune things, right? We made all those gains and we want to keep moving forward, but also do things very intentionally, very purposefully, and to the highest level of excellence that we can while still learning and growing as teachers and instructors. So it's a lot of work, but we're starting to move into instructional pieces away from systems and processes because the first few weeks of school, we all know if you're going to have a well-established classroom that's going to run itself, basically, you've got to get those systems, processes, and procedures in place. And now we can fine-tune our instructional practices. And I was listening to a podcast this week, as I always do, just out walking the dog when we were able to walk, or out running when I was able to get my workouts in. And we were talking about this having a standard of excellence. And in these podcasts, and it's ironic, I guess maybe when your brain is listening for certain things or it's on your mind, they start to pop up a little more. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. But we were talking about phrases like setting the bar high, striving for excellence, being better than you were yesterday. All of these, I don't want to say just motivational tactics, but all of these mindset shifts where we start to believe that, yes, we might be good, but how do we get to great? Now, I've done a lot of research, a lot of legwork in the world of education. Of course, not all of it is published, but I've really tried to focus, especially the 16 years that I sat as a principal, on taking all of my staff from good to great. I do believe that there's some preliminary things that have to be put in place. And when I did my hiring, I would tell my teams often, we hire for heart. We can teach you to teach. We can teach you our policies and our systems, but we can't teach you to care. And that care piece has to be more than just care about kids. Of course, that's number one, right? Care about our students, or you don't belong in our building. Care about our community, or you're not going to be there to serve, which was our culture, our philosophy. However, you have to care about your own work. This was a hard one to really start to decipher, I guess you would say, because you can ask somebody, do you care about your work? And what are they going to tell you in an interview? Of course, they're going to tell you yes, right? And if I ask all of you teachers right now, do you care about your work? I believe you do because you're watching this episode, but you could just tell me whatever you think I want to hear. And that's just our human nature. But when you start to talk and have conversations rather than just badger with interview questions, you start to get a feel for people. What is important to them? What is their brand, so to speak? I know we talk about that with just influencers, but aren't teachers really influencers? Hmm. In 2025, they are, that's for sure. So it made me start to think about putting all of this together. What I think about when I'm working with my team that I'm leading right now, and everything that I was listening to in these podcasts, and just the work that I do putting together my program to submit to the state. I know I'm always striving for excellence, but how do I know what excellence really is? And it made me start to think, how many times as a teacher have you asked yourself, I think this is an effective classroom, but is my classroom really excellent? Is my classroom really a place that kids want to be? Is my classroom a place I want to be as a teacher? So I started to think, well, what if this week, not only on Empower Ed, I talk about excellent classrooms and what they look like, sound like, feel like, but on my podcast, which is for school leaders, I talk about what makes an excellent school. So, having said all that, I did my blog this week, and it does talk about what makes a great classroom. And it's inspired me for this week's episode. So, here we go. Let's talk about what really does make an excellent classroom. I think about the Pinterest pictures, the images that you see, and every summer, teachers scrolling. I did it myself, I'm going to tell you, but scrolling furiously, trying to find the perfect image of what they wanted to emulate their classroom to look like. And I get it. I wanted my classroom to be that space when people walked in, they were like, whoa. I do the same thing for my home. Now, of course, I have a virtual background right now, but if you walk in my home, you're going to see it sparkles. It's very, very put together. I was very intentional. I built this home 4 years ago, very intentional on the style, the fixtures, the pieces, the details. Once I got into my home, what kinds of things was I going to adjust? What kind of furnishing was I going to put into place? Details, aesthetics, beauty matters to me, just like so many of you teachers out there. So I get it. But beauty itself is not going to be the thing that makes your classroom excellent. What makes your classroom excellent is definitely that people want to be in the space, that they feel comfortable and wonderful in that space, but more so because you've built the relationship with them. I've said this year after year after year after year, especially after my first year, where I honestly thought I was not going to be offered a contract. I walked into my first assignment in fourth grade, math and science here in Houston, totally out of my element, totally thought I knew everything and I didn't, and thinking that I just needed to be the fun teacher everybody liked, and then the classroom would run itself. Boy, it ran itself, but not in the way that I wanted it to. Years later, I think I've shared before, I've had to go find my students from that first year and apologize because I'm sure I ruined them. When they say you have a subpar teacher for a year, it takes a great teacher the following year to catch up. And I know they needed an amazing teacher after they were with me. I share that because I want you to know I'm human. I would never say that being in front of you today is like a miracle, but it almost kind of is. Because if you graded me and my entire career just on that first year, you would not want to be listening to me today. But over the years, I realized the relationship cannot be, I'm the fun teacher that everybody likes. The relationship has to be, I'm the person that students trust, that I get to know them and understand what motivates them, that they get to know me and understand where my boundaries are, that we form connections so that kids feel safe to make mistakes, to ask questions when they don't know what they're doing, and to be themselves, to be authentically a student. I've had conversations with several students over the years as a leader outside of a classroom, and they'll tell me, because they feel comfortable enough with me, they'll tell me their real thoughts about every single teacher that I work with. They'll tell me if they like them or not. They'll tell me why or why not. They'll tell me if they feel safe in those classrooms. And they'll tell me if they're learning or if they're not, if they feel comfortable asking questions. Do your students feel that way? If they sat down with their principal, school leader, assistant principal, coach, your coach, whatever the person is outside of your classroom, and that person said, how do you feel about your teacher? Would they say, I trust my teacher. I know my teacher believes in me. I know my teacher wants the best for me. I know my teacher cares about me. Relationships go a long way, y'all. I'm telling you, when they are established and they're genuine, your kids will do anything for you. Your kids will work hard to please you. And not just to please you, but because you believe that they can be successful, they'll want to step up and be successful. So the first thing that makes an excellent classroom is definitely having the relationships. Once you have the relationship set, you can set those standards high. Now, I've shared before, I know we had a whole episode on this, that if you're pushing your students to reach high standards, you have to be able to support them. Because otherwise, when they fail and they feel like they're not supported, they're not going to try again. But when you set the bar high, provide them with the right kind of support balanced with the right kind of productive struggle, your kids will grow, they will flourish, and they will continue to be motivated to achieve at the highest level of excellence that they can achieve. And isn't everything we do about growing students? Because if we're not growing students, what are we doing? They can go to daycare with an uncertified, uneducated person. And I'm not saying anything ugly about daycares, but we know you don't have to have teaching credentials to be at a daycare and get babysat. So basically, if we're not growing our students, are we just babysitting them? Are we just a place for them to go in the day when their parents go to work? Or to keep them off the streets if you're more secondary? Once that relationship is established, you can put these really, really tough expectations in place only if, however, you have a plan to support. I remember, and I was a little bit older, but I was going into some advanced math classes in high school. Math had always been an area that I excelled. I excelled in school, period, but math was one that I really excelled in. Seventh or eighth grade, I can't remember. One of the grades I was on, maybe it was both grades. I was completely on self-study. I think it was seventh grade. And then in eighth grade, I started taking high school math. So in high school, I started taking college math when I got to my junior and senior year. It was hard. There was not a lot of us that were able to do that. So our class was very small, but that also meant we didn't have a lot of peers to work with and to connect with and to talk to and ask questions of. And it hadn't been for our teachers, I don't think we would have been able to accomplish what we accomplished. I know now it's dual credit or it's AP, but back in the 80s, we didn't have anything like that. And I grew up in a small town, but I had excellent teachers who pushed us hard. And they would tell us every day, you're in a college level course, you need to act like it. And we'd all look at each other like, whoa, whoa, wait, what do we do? What did we do wrong? But then we would go through the learning. We would start to do our independent work. And if we had questions, we always knew our teacher was going to be there to support us. It wasn't a matter of how am I going to get help? It was a matter of when can I get the help? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're in a classroom and you want a classroom that is excellent, you have to set the bar high for every student, no matter what their background is, no matter what special programs they might be in. Their bar might be a little bit different, but every student can learn. You've got to believe that, and you got to be able to support them on the way. I also feel that you, as the teacher, has got to show up. The teacher has to be on their game. I'm working with a teacher, and I'm going to preface, I love this teacher. As a matter of fact, if my child was little and this teacher lived in the Houston area and was accessible, I would definitely put my child in this classroom. However, we've been working together for a while, and the teacher is undergoing some personal things. And for about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, the teacher has not been herself. And in conversations, we've talked about my students aren't performing, which is very unusual. So the question is why? Digging into that, she, of course, has figured it out. It's her. She hasn't been monitoring. She hasn't been showing up. She hasn't been putting grades in. She hasn't been preparing deep enough to really deliver the instruction. And for a bit of time, I even heard her say, and right now, I don't even care. Of course, my job is to coach. And so having conversations and talking about it and getting to the root of the concern and finding ways that we can get ourselves back on track, I am happy to say that I feel like this teacher is back on track. And everything about the work she's doing is different. Her planning is different. Her preparation is different. The way she shows up, she doesn't just walk in, has thrown some kind of outfit on, but she shows up ready, looking like her most successful self. She's having conversations with kids again. She's monitoring their work. She's answering misconceptions. We know teaching is hard. We know we're all human. I've been there. In the 30 years that I've been in education, I have gone through the loss of a parent, the loss of both grandparents who did a lot of the raising of me, of divorce, ups and downs with my own daughter through high school and college, breakups after the divorce, significant moves across country and back. I've been there, y'all. I have been there. It's really hard to show up when times are hard in our personal life. But here's what we have to remind ourselves. Who are our clients? It's not our school district. So if you're feeling like, okay, I'm upset, I'm not having a great life, I'm going to take advantage of my days off, my district people, blah, 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 whatever. Okay. But I promise you, they can replace you in a second. It's not going to affect them. And I don't say that to be ugly. That's just reality. It's the same for me. But who can't always replace you is our students. Those are our true clients. What if it was your child in that classroom where you've decided you don't want to show up as your best self? Or circumstances are making it hard to show up as your best self? And what means best self? Not only do we need to be able to show up and care about the work that we do and care about our students, be prepared, dress the part, fake it till you make it. But we also have to realize something, and this is my final thing I want to talk about today that makes an excellent classroom, is when we realize we don't always have to have the answers, and we might not always have the answers. I worked with a teacher years back, and the teacher struggled, brand new first year and even in the second year. But I think one of the main concerns about this situation with the teacher is there was an attitude of, I already know. I had to step in as the principal and start coaching more directly with this teacher because of circumstances that had happened. And I remember we sat one day planning for a lesson, and it was actually going to be his observation. So here's your principal coming in. You're already treading light in water, right? You're already on the chopping block. Your principal's sitting down telling you exactly what she's going to be looking for in the classroom. And he says, with all due respect, I don't need this help. I'll be fine. I already know. Now, I'm a pretty patient person. And I remember stepping back and reminding myself, don't respond when something upsets you, because that was an upsetting statement. But I took a deep breath and I said, well, then when I come in, I expect excellence. Because if my child was in this room, I would expect, as a parent, excellence. And my philosophy has always been what I say earlier, if it's not good enough for my own child, it's not good enough for anybody else's. And right now, your students are the lowest performing in the district. You're not turning in lesson plans. And every walkthrough I've come in for, your indicators have been extremely low. I took my things and I walked out. I went in and did the observation. And y'all, it's what I needed to get rid of that person. But unfortunately, students had to suffer because of that. And for those of you listening to this, teachers out there, you want to be excellent. You get those students the second year. And now you're making up for a subpar teacher. Be open to feedback. But not just that, understand that you are a lifelong learner. What you learned in college will get you so far. What you learned in your alternative certification program will get you so far. And honestly, what you learned last year got you as far as you were last year. If you want to take it to the next level, you have to keep learning. You have to keep seeking new ways of doing things. Now, that doesn't mean throw everything away. That doesn't mean that you have to change everything. Things that are working, let them work. But we all know, even myself, I sat in a reflection meeting yesterday and I had to say, after 30 years, I'm having this hurdle, this difficulty that I have to figure out how to fix. Does anybody have any ideas? 30 years. And I have done so many things over those 30 years. But I have to be open to the feedback and I have to be open to the learning. So as we recap today and you go into this next week of school, the first week of fall, getting ready to really be focused on what your students need and developing a classroom that is not just good, but great. Remember, relationships, high standards, being able to go in and engage with students, show up as your best self, and be sure that you are open to learning and growing. Because even Texas Teacher of the Year, I promise you, is learning and growing on his or her journey and all over the world. All right, y'all. I hope this was helpful. I hope it's going to make a difference for the future of your classroom. Of course, if you want to work with me, I have multiple ways that you can do so. I have a platform where you can do your own individual online learning, $20 a month. It's so very affordable. The Uncommon platform is the Netflix for educators. In addition to that, I can work one-on-one with people. Just reach out to me, but you can find all of my information below in the show notes. And I hope you have the best year you've ever had, going from good to great. I'll see you next week right back here on Empowered Educator.